So today we're learning Shaar HaYichud and Vilna. We're on page Pei Gimel, which is the opposite page of 164 in Tanya, second section called Shaar HaYichud and Vilna. V'hine, we're at the new paragraph on page Pei Gimel. So the Tanya here is talking about that Hashem is invested in the world and part of the world. And the reason we don't see him is because he made a Tzimtzum, a contraction. He hid himself, but he's here. Now here, in today's Shaar, what we're going to learn is a very important issue. And it's basically a fundamental difference between the Alter Rebbe and the Vilna Gaon, the Gra. The Vilna Gaon is acronym HaGaon Rebbe Eliyahu. His name was Elijah of Vilna, Eliyahu of Vilna, hence known as the Gra. The Gra is the father figure of the Litvaks, or what used to be called the Misnagdim, the opponents of Hasidim, of the Baal Shem Tov. And the Tanya is not the father figure of Hasidus, that's the Baal Shem Tov, but he's basically amongst the Hasidim, the Hasidic rabbis and Rebbes. I'm gonna now give it to you, say it outside, and then we'll study it inside. And basically, when we say Hashem is in the world, the question that one asks themselves, or should ask themselves, is how can God be here with Hashem with all of his glory, and there should be an existence? God is godliness. Godliness is godliness, and the world is physical and material. How do the two go together? That's the million-dollar question that all philosophers of all times have asked themselves. And the answer, so there's two basic answers. There's the answer of the Tanya and the Arizal, and there's the answer of the Vilna Gaon and others. The Vilna Gaon says, Tzimtzum, the contraction that God made upon himself is chptr. So the word now, we're focusing on the word chptr or shelo chptr. Chptr means it's literal. Lo chptr means it's not literal. So the Vilna Gaon, he argues that when we say God contracted himself, God's infinity is not in the physical world. It's not just that he's hidden, it's not there. And why isn't it there? Because not only can't the world handle it, it's an embarrassment to the infinity of God to say that God is interested in all of our silly little physical material things. So the argument of that the Vilna Gaon and those that even earlier thought this way is that when we say that Tzimtzum, when we say God contracted his infinity, it's literal, chptr, meaning he contracted himself, that all he gives the world is a manifestation of himself, but his real self is not there. The Tanya in what we're going to learn today disagrees and argues and will prove from his perspective, which is both logical and otherwise, that you cannot say that. And God is here. His infinity is here too. It's just not felt. So the Alter Rebbe says, when we say that when the Arizal and the Zohar Kodesh, they say there was Tzimtzum, it's sheloi chptr. It doesn't mean in its literal sense, where he removed himself. Mark, it's like, hey, guys, I'm creating a world. I'm giving you part of myself, which is applicable and you guys can handle. But my very essence is in Florida, where Mark lives in Fort Lauderdale. It's 100 degrees. We're going to the beach today. That's where I am. Spiritually. We're going to the spiritual beach. We're hanging out with the souls today. And what do you guys have here on earth? You have only, my manifestation. The Alter Rebbe says, no, that doesn't do it. So that is the kernel of disagreement. And being that we're learning Shaar HaYichud ve'emunah, the Alter Rebbe now will present his case. So let's learn inside what he says rather than just taking my words for it. V'hinei, bottom of page Pei Gimel, 83 in the Hebrew Pei Gimel. V'hinei, v'kan yesh lahavin, based on this we can understand shigigas miktsas chachamim. This is heavy words. The mistake that some sages made be'eineihem, in their own eyes, from their own perspective. And the Alter Rebbe says even harsher, Hashem yichaper b'adam, God should atone them for this mistake. Sheyishgu v'tohu b'yunam, they mistaked, and they erred, and they mistaked in their analysis b'kisvei Arizal, in the way they understood the writings of the Arizal. By the way, the Alter Rebbe is not cursing them. He just feels very adamantly that this is a major philosophical mistake, and he feels they made this mistake, and he's asking Hashem should forgive them for this mistake. In other words, this wasn't a mistake by little shmendricks, by little people. These were big people, whether it's the Gaon or, understand, we're talking about great Jewish, not just scholars, but rabbis and teachers and tzaddikim, but he believes they made a philosophical mistake. So he's asking that Hashem forgive them. Okay. What does he say?
Yechaper is more than Michael.
I'm sorry?
Yechaper is more than Michael.
I know.
The implication is there's an Aveira. It's not just...
Okay, but the Yechaper is going on the word shigigu. Shogeg.
Okay.
The Alter Rebbe wasn't here. The Alter Rebbe wasn't a Yid that was looking to stick it to someone else. It's a serious mistake you made, and so the way you're touching up Yechaper in this context, I don't believe that's the pshat. But let's go on. Okay, so he says, V'hevinu, and they understood. So he's now bringing us their position. Inyan Tzimtzum, Baruch, the concept of Tzimtzum, Hamuskir Shom, that's mentioned in the Arizal, right? Because the Arizal is the one who mentions the Tzimtzum. They say, chptr, it's literal. And he explains, Shakadosh Baruch Hu silikatz, meaning God removed himself. The word silik means he removed himself entirely. Umehusay, his essence, chas v'sholem, God forbid to say that, but that's what they say. Me'olam hazeh, from the physical world. Rak, rather. So if that's the case, according to them, how does the world exist, Moshe? If God's essence is removed, how does the world exist? So he says now, going on to page 166, Rak shemashgiach milmayla, top of the page, turn your page. Hashem has providence over them from above. He's like sitting in his palace and looking out the window and seeing everything that's going on. Bashgoche protis, with divine providence, on kol HaYitzurim, on all creatures, kulam, all of them, asher b'shamayim, all that are in the heaven and above, al haaretz b'tochas, and on the earth below. Stop. That is their position. Hashem, in his very essence, is not on earth, is not in the physical world. Now you notice the Alter Rebbe says not on earth, olam hazeh. Does this mean that Hashem is the essence of God, according to them, is in the spiritual worlds? The answer is no. So why does the Alter Rebbe mention olam hazeh? That's what I told you before, because olam hazeh is the crux of the cradle. The physical world is the low world. So he doesn't just mean Isser, that Hashem's essence is not in the physical world, but it is in the spiritual worlds. No! They also believe that God is not in the spiritual worlds because it's still not the essence of God. So anything that's not the essence of God, in other words, according to this Shita, do angels, let's say angels, do angels have the essence of God or not? No. The answer is no. Stars, moon, sun, heavenly hosts, is the essence of God there? No. So therefore, why does he point out the physical world? That according to them, God is not in the physical world, because the physical world is where you see it, it's palpable. How could the God be in such a physical world, with such a low standing status of a material, corporeal world? But it's not to exclude the spiritual worlds. So going back to their position, which the Alter Rebbe says they made a mistake, and maybe if we have time, we'll talk about the practical ramifications from this disagreement here in Tanya with the Gaon of Vilna, that the primary progeny student of the Gaon was Reb Chaim of Lozhin, the great-grandfather of the Soloveitchik family, of Rabbi Soloveitchik. And in his sefer called Nefesh HaChaim, which is like the Bible of the Litvak philosophical position, Nefesh HaChaim, the soul of Chaim, referring to Chaim of Lozhin, he disagrees with his Rebbe, the Vilna Gaon, in one detail. So Chabad Hasidim felt that because he lived later than the Gaon, right? I think the Gaon passed away in 1798. Reb Chaim Volozhiner lived into the 1800s. He in Vilna, and there were some very, very prominent Lubavitch Chassidim in Vilna, that they had an impact on him in explaining the Balatanya's Shita here in Tanya, in Shaar HaYichud chapter 7 that we're learning, and that he agreed with the Alter Rebbe in one detail, and disagreeing with his teacher, the Gaon, and he agreed with his teacher in another detail. And what is that? And I don't want to go into this because it's it's really very heavy and needs a lot of thought and conversation. When we say Hashem's essence is here or not, there are four things: Ma'ar, the illuminary, and Or, the illumination, the energy of God. When we say God's essence is here or not, we look at the issue both in the illuminary and in the illumination. The Gaon of Vilna and that Shita says God's essence is in neither. The Tzimtzum, the contraction, is not only on the illumination, it's also on the illuminary. That the illuminary of the physical world, of all worlds, has been contracted and is not here. The Alter Rebbe says that the essence of God is in both the illuminary and the illumination. The Reb Chaim Volozhin says, I'll agree to the Balatanya that as far as the illumination, illuminary is concerned, God's essence is not here, but in the illumination, what we call in Hebrew the Or, God's essence is not here. So Reb Chaim kind of makes a pshara, a compromise between the Gaon and the Alter Rebbe. But that's not for now, but just good for you to know, because you come across maybe a Litvische real student of Nefesh HaChaim. Most don't know this. Most don't learn it. They really don't. I don't care if they come from Panovich or Lakewood. They don't study these things. But there are those that do. So it's good for you as people being exposed in the community to know this. That although the Alter Rebbe and the Gaon had a philosophical disagreement, as we're learning here, Reb Chaim, the progeny student of the Gaon, in one detail agreed with the Balatanya, and one agreed in detail disagreed. Okay, and more about this, Rabbi Dr. Norman Lamb, Olav Sholem, wrote a book about the Shita of Reb Chaim. He gave me the book when I interviewed him about 30 years ago or so, and I wrote that up in Conversations with the Rebbe, my interview with Norman Lamb, and over there he talks about it. So if you want to read an English book about the Shita of the Vilna Gaon, I would point you to that book of Norman Lamb. But let's go back to the Tanya. So the Alter Rebbe now says, Vehine, we're on the second line, 2 words from the end, on page 166. Vehine milvachi efshe klal lo yimer. Now the Alter Rebbe gives us his position and why we can't accept the other position of the Gaon, etc., and why he feels it's a mistake and an error. Vehine. Milvad she'enei she'efshe klal lo yimer. In addition to the fact that one cannot say inyan tzimtzum kipshute, that the tzimtzum, the contraction, is literal, shehu mimikri haguf ala kodesh baruch hu. Basically, if you're saying that, then you're applying, the words is mimikri haguf, happenstances, happenings, mikri means happenings of bodily nature on God. Says the Alter Rebbe, your entire equation doesn't begin. How can you apply a concept of tzimtzum in the sense that it's literal on God? God is transcendent. In other words, when you say, let's say, a teacher holds back information, or someone hides himself and he doesn't find himself where you are, that's bodily, that's goof, that's physical. So the Alter Rebbe's first argument in how he rejects the Gaon's position is that to think that Tzimtzum is kipshutai is using physical material ideas on God, and it's not the case. Yes, sir. I think there's some better words or in English for this concept. What is it? Pantheism? You know what I'm talking about? Yes, sir?
Yeah. Pantheism is that the world is God.
So then it's not pantheism. There's another. Go ahead.
Yeah.
So it's something else. You don't remember? No. So there's a word in English it's a good word. We don't use it much, but I've come across it, which denotes this idea of applying.
Corporeality?
What? No, not corporeality. No, that I know. What?
Who knows it?
Who knows it?
Hillel. He's not in the share.
Oh, Hillel knows it. Okay, we'll get him next time. But the idea we understand. How can you apply, Mark? How can you apply physical, material, corporeal ideas to the metaphysical, to the transcendent God? It's 2 different worlds. So that's the first argument of the Alter Rebbe. He's saying those that believe that God literally is contracted, that he's not here, that means you're allowing the concept of tzimtzum, you're looking at it in the physical way. And he says, it's not the case. God is not physical. What kind of God is God if God is physical? And God is not physical. Let's go look inside. Let's continue. Hanivdol Mehem, and why is this not right? Because God is so separate from this concept. Rivir Vav is Havdolis, Adam Finitum separations Aden Kates. That's number one. That's his first argument why the concept of Tzimtzum being literal is not acceptable. Here begins, make a note to yourself, point number 2, argument number 2. Af gam zois, the 5th line in the middle. Af gam zois, additionally, Yoni, Afgam Zois means additionally. Why can't we say this? Loi bidas yidaberu. The words spoken are not spoken with intelligence. Again, very, very heavy language of the Alter Rebbe in rejecting. He says, intellectually, the argument of Tzimtzum chptr is not sensible. Why? Since you guys too, right, Vilna, Gaon, and everyone else who came up with this argument in that position, you're believers. You believe Shakadosh Baruch Hu Yodeya Kol HaYitzura. Now here we're switching, Chevra. Pay attention to God's knowledge. You believe that God knows everything that He created. Shebaylam Hazeh Shafel within this physical low world. And you believe Shemashgiach Aleim, that He hovers over them and He has the providence over them. Valkain, and you believe that Ein Yidi Osei, that God's knowledge of everything happening doesn't add Oisa Mosifa Boy Ribui V'Chidush. It doesn't add an iota of addition and novelty to God. Why? Because God knows everything. This we spoke about yesterday at length. By knowing Himself. Hare, therefore, Kaviyochel, metaphorically speaking, God's essence and God's knowledge, Hakol Echot, are all one, as we learned yesterday from the Rambam. By a person, it's three separate things, right? Avram. By a person, the knowledge, the knower, and the known are three separate things, right? So before you learn something, Avram, you didn't know it. While you're learning it, you know it. And later on, when you think about it, you know it even better, right? So it's three different positions. Why? Because knowledge by a human being is an adjunct to the human being. It's not the human being. It's something a human being does. But by Hashem, by God, His knowledge is Him. He doesn't know things because He goes outside of Himself to study them. No, He knows Himself. And because He knows Himself, He knows everything. That's the meaning of the words, Baruch. B'yedias atzmo yodeya hakol. By knowing Himself, He knows everything. So the Alter Rebbe's argument is, hey, you all believe, right? You all believe, b'amina b'nei maminim, that God knows everything by knowing Himself. And you believe that He's mashgiach and He has hashgacha, divine providence over everything. If that's the case, one second. So here's this final his argument. If that's the case, how can you say this Tzimtzum chptr? You're telling me God knows everything. According to the argument that God contracted His infinity, then if He contracted His infinity, His Ein Sof, and His Ein Sof is not in the world, not in the spiritual world, not in the physical world, then how does He know everything? You have to be here to know everything. God has to be here. So this is the argument of the Alter Rebbe. You agree that God knows everything. Well, God knows everything, He has to be here. But you're saying He's not here. You're saying He left us to be, and He in His infinity is elsewhere. Chptr, Tzimtzum chptr, says the Alter Rebbe. You can't make up your mind. You believe He knows everything, but yet you don't believe He's here. How do the two work together? That's a second argument. Let's continue. Says the Alter Rebbe, and I'll bring you proof to this now from the Zohar HaKadosh. We're just coming from Lag Boimas. It's appropriate to study some Zohar. Here we go. And this is what's written in Tikkunim, Tikkun Nun Zayin. It's called the 57th Tikkun. Quote, how many times have you heard these words learning Chassidus so many years, Chevra? Hundreds and thousands of times. There is no place. Les atar. There is no place. Poni minei. That is empty of Him. God is all over. Not in the upper, not in the lower. That's a quote from Tikkun Nun Zayin. Furthermore, he brings Ubarayim Mehemna. Rayim Mehemna refers to Moshe Rabbeinu, which this is a section of Zohar that we believe Moshe, the Rashbi quotes Moshe. Pasha's Pinchas, in the Pasha of Pinchas, which is coming up soon. Iyu Tafis Bikulu, it says God grasps all, but the less man the Tafis Bay, but no one can grasp him. Iyu Seiviv Kol Almim, God encompasses everything. The less man the Nofik Mirshu, say there's nothing that goes out of God's domain, Lebar, to the outside. Further, Iyu Mimale Kol Almim, Hashem pervades all. Iyu Mekasher Umeyached, this is all from the Zohar. And Hashem binds and unites, Zina lezina, kind to kind, thing to thing. Ilo v'tato, upper and lower. The less kurva, bedalad yisoidin, and there is no closeness in the four elements, ela b'kuchebricho, only with God. Kadiyu beinayu, when God is found amongst the four elements, Akkan l'shoinei, here ends this section of Raya Mehemna Pashush Pinchas. Now the Alter Rebbe gives his interpretation on this piece of Zohar. What does the Zohar mean? That less man the toughest bay, no one can grasp him. She'ein mi she'yitvois ba'asoga sichloi, nothing, and no one can grasp with one's intellect mikol sichli milyonim, including from the supernal intellect of the stars of the heavenly hosts. They can't grasp the essence of God. Stima, the whole stima. Another quote: God is the secret of all secrets. And no one can grasp you, klal, at all. The gam betachtoinim, and even here below on earth, afal gav the il memalu kolami, although we say God pervades this world, his energy pervades it, it's not like the soul of man, toich gufay, that pervades the body. Shehi nitfeses toich haguf. Chevra, the soul, our neshama, is toich haguf. Our body grabs the soul. Once the soul, Moshe Myers, decides to come into here, guess what? The body doesn't let it go. We shouldn't know of it. There are people who are so sick and they want to pass on. They say, I can't handle it. And Rahman Nebuch, Hashem says, no, the body doesn't let. How do you let that? The body wants, for whatever reason, the pain, the torture. It's not up to you, soul. It's up to God. And God gives dominance to the body over the soul. And only when the body decides, with God's permission, to let go of the soul, does the soul leave. I told you that painful story. That painful story of the person who had the machla. He had the illness and Cronites. And his friends, they used to come to a 6 o'clock morning shiur. And the friend said to him, we're praying for you, we're davening you that it should be removed. He says, please, don't daven for me for that. Daven that I should die. I'm suffering, I'm in pain every day. I want to die. And God doesn't let me die. So if you're going to daven for me, daven I should die. Now, I'm not getting into it. There's a Gemara in Brachas. The Gemara speaks about this. But my point is like this, that when the Alter Rebbe says here, quoting the Zohar, and explaining it, that the body grabs the soul, it's literal, the body grabs the soul. And I'm sure Isser, as a physician, understands this better, you just can't, as much as, today I want to go. Too bad, you can't go today. Doesn't work that way. Why? Why?
Does it work the vice versa?
That what? Vice versa what? That what?
Where the soul tries, where it's the opposite way. We're not.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
body grabs over the soul grabs over.
it does. When a person has, for example, a thought of tshuva, the person lives like a behemoth, and all of a sudden he wakes up, he says, what am I doing to myself? I'm a Jew. Where am I? So then you see the soul is like controlling the body. The body wants to just indulge. The body's been indulging for 50 years. Whatever that indulgence is. And all of a sudden the person's soul starts. I'm not talking about, dieting and addictions. That could be included too if it's coming from the soul. We're talking about a tshuva, and a tshuva, and it doesn't mean only something was about the tshuva. Everyone says, I'm sick and tired of living this way. I want to live a more holy life. So that's a call from the neshama. Yes, absolutely. But in this context of Tanya, the Alter Rebbe wants to make the difference between the pervading of God's energy in the universe and the pervading of soul into the body. And he's saying that it's not comparable because we find that the body grabs. And when you say grabs and grasps, it means it has control over the soul. And and it's an important thing to know. It works both ways. That's why, what does it say in the Zohar and the famous story with the Tzemach Tzedek who told his wife or his daughter who wanted to not eat and before davening and she was very weak and the Tzemach Tzedek says in the Zohar, a little hole in the body, a little blemish is a big hole in the neshama. And a big hole in the neshama, a little hole in the neshama is also a big hole in the goof, in the body. But in this case, fasting when you're not supposed to fast because you're sick makes not just a big hole in your goof, you're hurting your soul. So what do we see from there as well? That the relationship between the body and the soul is such that it grabbed it. Let's go back into the Tanya. And the Alter Rebbe, and he's going to give us some examples now, more concrete examples. To the extent that the body is impacted from the changes that there are in the body, vitzaroi, and the pain, mehakoish, from the body being hit. Yes, when the body is hit, it hurts. Or klirus, or when you get a cold. Or chamimas eis, temperature. Ukiyotz, and things that are similar. All of these are examples of how the soul is impacted by the body. Now, this is a very important point because sometimes we say, a tzaddik, a neshama, I can do what I want. My dear friends, people have tried that and it hasn't worked. Now, at the same time, to be too calculated and not to have the emunah is also not hitting the mark. And this is a balance. And this is what we struggle with, I'll give you an example. Lag Bomer, the other night was a Fabringen. At about 11:15, I said, listen, I got to get up early. I have a shear. I daven before. I'm up 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. It's already 11:15. I need a few hours sleep. I found out the guy Fabringen till 3 in the morning. And it was really beautiful. Now, I based on my responsibilities, I felt I was being responsible. Now, could I have stayed till 3 and laid down for an hour and a half, and get up? Maybe. But, I know myself, and I know usually I wouldn't do that, or I wouldn't be fresh, and I need to teach, and I need to inspire, and understand it myself, and prepare this year, on and on and on. So what we see is that this issue, or like Moshe and I have discussed, do we have time in the middle of the day to study and things like that? We have other responsibilities. These are questions, legitimate questions. And so you find one type of person who says, emunah, faith. The bills will be paid. Everything will work out. Just connect now. And the other attitude, the other extreme is, no. I'm just got to be in a box. And I think that what we have from Hasidus in particular is there should be a balance. There are times where you go all out. And then there are times when you have to be more within the box. And this is a balance. But going back to the Tanya here, the Alter Rebbe says clearly, Mashenkein, now in the next part, Mashenkein, conversely, when it comes to God, God, it doesn't change from the changes in the world. It's hot, it's cold, from summer to winter, from day to night. It says, darkness doesn't make it dark for you. And by night, and the dark, the night will shine like day. Why? Second to the last line on page 166. Because God is not grabbed at all while he's here in the world. Even though he pervades it. So this is the concept that we've learned many times, that whenever we talk about Hashem's energy pervading the world, it doesn't mean you got him where he can't get out. He can get out anytime he wants. You know why? Because he's here and he's not here. What does that mean? He's here fully. Tzimtzum chptr. The contraction is not on the infinity of the Ein Sof of God's energy. But the manner in which he's here is in a disguise. So it feels as though at times he's not here, or he's not looking, or he doesn't care, or he allows October 7th to happen. You understand? That's exactly, October 7th is an example of what we're learning here in Tanya. To say that Hashem wasn't in the world and wasn't aware and didn't care about what took place is heresy. And it's not Chaim Dalfin saying it, it's the Torah Kadosh saying it. But at the same time, Hashem chose, for whatever reason, which we don't know, and we don't understand, Hashem chose to disguise himself on October 7th. And then, and to let us fools argue the IDF is, and he's guilty, and she's guilty, and he's guilty, and make a big chunk from it, and we have what we have today. That's part of the divine experience. The Eibishter wants that. Why, I don't know, but that's what he wants. I think we can figure out why. He wants us to become mentioned. He wants us to own up to ourselves and take responsibility and not say, do whatever it is. Chevra, we'll stop now. And some very important things to think about, not just philosophical, but also practical. Yes, Yohini, what do you want to say?
No, I asked you before.
Anyone have any thoughts? Go ahead. I have the time if you want to say something. Very important shiur on the issue of Tzimtzum chptr or Shloi chptr. Is God's contraction literal or not? The difference between the Alter Rebbe and the Vilna Gaon, and be that as it may. But by the way, don't think that the Alter Rebbe belittles the Vilna Gaon. He understood where he was coming from. He disagrees with him, and he gives his reason for rejecting his argument. But it's not that you understand. Some people, they learn this, in a cursory way. Oh, look at the language here. You erred. You made a mistake. And as we saw, the Isser jumped on the word yechaper, v'chaper. The word chaper implies you're sinful intentionally. So I explained to Isser, he's already offline. That's not what it means. The yechaper is going on the word accidental, shaygig, error. Dr. Rebbe believes that that somehow they didn't think it through enough in this issue, and they came to that mistake. And he understands how you can come to such a mistake, and therefore he presents his position. Have a great day, everyone. We'll see everyone tomorrow.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Bye bye. Bye bye. Bye bye. Take care. Shalom. Take care.
Okay, bye-bye.